Welcome to Bennett's Bike Social. This is BMW's R1250 GS. It is the most efficient, it is the most evolved, it is the most refined. It's definitely the most powerful flat twin ever made. It marks 100 years of BMW's engineering excellence. But is it the best boxer twin ever? We're going to find out.
Tea bag. Don't squeeze it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you the 2024 R1300 GS, and alongside its predecessor, the 1250 GS. And I'll also present to you a Simon Hargreaves, Chief Ace Road Tester Extraordinaire.
Oh, I don't know about that. Thank
you. Come on then, top line, what's the differences between the two?
Absolutely everything.
Right.
It's quite straightforward. We have a completely new engine. It's redesigned, it's bigger, it's shorter stroke, it's more powerful. We have a completely new chassis, we have a new frame, we have new suspension, we have new telelever, we have a new paralever system, we have new clocks, I think the clocks might actually be the same. Yeah. That's about the only thing I think. Brakes are different, everything is different.
And the headlight, importantly.
The headlight especially, yeah. Styling is different, wind management, the ergonomics are different. So it's an entirely new machine.
So other than the screen and the badge, it is brand new.
Brand new, brand new.
Why? Any idea?
Why have they done it?
Well, this is a mega seller, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean,
it's
an
kind evolution.
Over the GS's history, BMW have reinvented it before. So the 1200 was a big step forward over the 1150. Pretty much the same kind of deal. New brakes, new frame, new engine, revamped engine, completely different. So it has had step change, iterative evolution over the years, and every so often there's a huge reinvention. This is a massive reinvention. And I think it was time for an update, because having ridden some of the rivals to the GS, the 1250 GS, it was beginning to feel a little bit left behind in some departments, specifically in the areas of outright performance. In terms of throttle response, in terms of engine response, in terms of mid-range, and also in terms of weight. A criticism often aimed at the 1250 GS is that it's big. Now that is an advantage in some situations, but it can also count against the bike. And so, yeah, one of the sort of main things with the 1300 GS is it's lighter, it's more manageable. But we need to measure it all and find out.
How are we going to tell the differences between the two?
Well, measurement and opinion. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dyno the bikes, we're going to speed test them, we're going to get all the performance figures, we're going to measure them with tape measures and riding positions. So we'll do all the numbers, get some empirical data, some facts, and then we're going to go for a really long road ride and get some opinion. Our opinion on how the bikes feel in terms of their comfort, in terms of how the engine performs, and the riding positions. So we're going to kind of evaluate them on the road. We're also going to run them out of fuel, see how far they'll go, see the differences in efficiency between the two engines. And then we're going to sit down and sort of dissect it all and talk about it at great length.
Very well. Well, what is the first test, sir?
I think the first thing we should do is get them on the dyno and let's find out what this new engine does compared to the old engine in terms of absolute power figures, absolute torque figures. So, dyno.
Let's go.
So what happened was, I think he rode into like a flower pot and it snapped. So what's that? That's like the option 719, isn't it? That's not going to snap, is it? That's pretty tough.
Yeah.
So the head, the cover that normally sits on there is a thinner plastic, and he'd snapped it right across that point there and severed the that's the HT lead, isn't it? I guess. So anyway, yeah, it cut right across there because you can see that there's kind of a radius there on the head. It's not sharp, but it's enough of an angle for it to just punch through and cut it. But I mean, the chances of it happening are pretty slim. You have to have the right flower pot at the right height in the wrong place. Yeah. Anyway, cool. Crack on.
Right, come on then. The verdict. I need the verdict.
For the dyno.
Numbers? Yes.
Okay, so R1300 GS, no surprise, is the most powerful, and we're talking 134.2 horsepower
Versus a claim of
143. Yes. So that's a 9 horsepower difference.
Yeah.
You know, it's 9 horsepower less. And then with the
That's
12,
good, isn't it?
yeah, that is good. I mean, that's not a lot of horsepower lost through shaft drive. Normally, you'd be expecting 12 horsepower, 13 horsepower, which, funnily enough, is what the 1250 is losing through its shaft drive. So that is 120 horsepower.
Yeah, against a claim of
About 134,
isn't it? Yeah.
134. So that's losing 14 horsepower. That's losing 9 horsepower through a new gearbox. New shaft drive, it's completely redesigned,
Yeah.
and BMW don't make the claim that it saps less power, but it clearly does, which is good.
the stats
So yeah,
don't lie.
so 134 horsepower is pretty healthy. So you should feel a big difference. The engine is bigger,
Yep.
exhaust and inlet valves are bigger, throttle body is the same size. It should rev harder because it's more over square, so it's a shorter stroke than that motor, but wider bores. So a completely different kind of power characteristic. Funny enough, the curves look fairly similar. There's just more of this one.
Just
More-
higher all the way through.
Yeah, all the way through. The bottom end, mid-range, and at the top end. It doesn't actually rev harder. It has the potential to rev harder,
Right.
which is an interesting little thing.
I guess that's down to the electronics. BMW don't want you to have to.
Not yet. Maybe one day. I mean, that's kind of how engine design works, really, I think, is that they build in the potential for the next model 2 or 3 years down the line, maybe to make a little bit more performance. But anyway, yeah, healthy figures. It's a broad spread of power and torque.
So the headline is that makes what that is claimed.
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
Well, let's go fast on them. Shall we see about performance testing
See
next?
what the difference is when we actually ride them and measure them.
It'll be good fun.
Let's go do it.
Crack on. Right then, that's the performance testing element of our mega test over with. We've been joined by Bruce, who's been up and down that runway oodles of times. Simon, what are the headlines?
Well, the top line is pretty much what we'd expect, that the R1300 is a little bit quicker everywhere, almost everywhere, than the 1250, which is what the performance on the dyno would suggest. It's got a higher top speed, it's slightly quicker over the quarter mile, it's slightly quicker over the 0 to 60 is a kind of roughly equivalent, we can say, but 0 to 60 is a very short space of time to launch a bike. The only place that sort of the 1250 is faster where you wouldn't expect it to be is the top gear roll-on, 40 to 70. And we are talking hundredths of a second, a couple of tenths of a second, but not a huge amount. I think what really interests me, Bruce, is that you've been speed testing for like 30 years plus.
Yeah, a long time.
So just give me the top line comparison in terms of actually out there riding them, performance testing the 1300 against the 1250.
Well, significant in some ways, but not in others. So,
Okay.
So initially, you're like, well, they feel like completely different bikes. They're the same model, so it's a complete redesign. The size, the weight is much lighter. The engine's perkier, it's sportier on the new one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very different.
That is interesting. So it's not like a continuation of a GS. It's like they've kind of gone, well, that's that bit, and then here's a new bike. It's like they're different, not just an extension of.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, it's been reborn in a different
Yeah.
mould, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Certainly with weight and with the power figures and everything, if you were to believe the spec sheet, I would have expected a bigger difference, certainly in performance and acceleration.
Yeah, we saw there was a bit more in top speed, 147 effectively against 139.
The caveat here is, of course, then no one buys a GS do
To go
they, for their
top speed.
performance.
No,
Yeah.
they don't. It's everything in between. So,
It's interesting to know what power there is there when you are rolling on, for example.
yeah. So I think one of the key things that could be perceived as an improvement is the immediate response that the newer bike has. The old one is just a little bit lazier in the throttle, but that might suit some people for touring and things like that. But again, you've got so many electronics and rider aids to sort of again tailor that experience to what you want. It's not a one fits all, is it?
No.
Yeah.
There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's, we've seen the figures, all the figures on screen. So I think.
Well, look, yes, what's next? We need to go and measure it, don't we, and weigh it and check out the sort of the riding position and the ergo. So let's go, shall we?
yeah, we're still measuring. Let's keep measuring.
Three, two, one, go.
You went early.
Let them go.
You were going to win anyway.
Right, you've had your measuring sticks out. We've done all the necessaries, haven't we?
With the tape measure.
Yeah, we'll get into the depths of that in the conclusion piece. But any headlines to worry about?
I think we could say one bike is probably sportier than the other at this stage. But I don't want to give too much away. Yes, yeah, I wonder. But I think now we're going to go for a ride. We're going to stop measuring things. We're going to go out and get some proper, solid opinion, some road testing opinion on what the two bikes are like to ride in terms of their throttle use, the engine, the handling, everything else. And we've got our fuel cans. We're going to measure fuel consumption. I reckon 200 miles is my estimation. I think we should just get out there and get them riding.
Top the tanks up. We can swap about a bit, can't we? And have a go. Come on then.
Okay.
it's gone. Gone. Yeah. Ah. Oh, that's it. That really is it. Whew, that's your lot. Right then, boyo. So we've done best part of 500 miles, you reckon?
Yeah, altogether. over
Yeah,
the
that
last
includes, of course, all the
week.
performance testing, so up and down the runway from
Yeah.
Brucey
Yeah.
Bonus, and the big full tank of fuel that we did, and the
We've measured everything.
measuring. We've done, yeah, we've had
We've
the measuring
opinionated
sticker.
everything.
Dyno runs.
Yeah, yeah.
Crikey, we've left no stone unturned. Well, there's bound to be a stone unturned, and I'm sure you'll tell us which stone we've not turned.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have evidence, we have data, we have opinion. Where should we start?
Well, should we start with the engine, I guess?
big,
That's
innit?
the top line. They're both big units, but one's bigger than the other, and yet smaller, strangely enough, like
Yeah,
a TARDIS.
Dynamic.
It's bigger on the inside.
Come on then. What are the figures then? We'll gather them on the screen for you. But claim on the 1300 is 143, and it makes 134 and a bit.
Yep.
So 8.8 is the difference.
Yep.
Claim on the R1250 is 134. 120 is what we measured at
And it's-
at BSD,
Yeah.
making the difference 14. So it's a bigger difference between
It
claim
is.
and reality.
So we have a bigger engine with a shorter stroke and wider bores, which is a Revia thing. It's completely redesigned, it's lighter, and it feels lighter to use. When the engine revs up quicker, the crank feels lighter, it's like there's less flywheel weight, it's much more responsive, I think. If you don't agree, stop me at any
100%.
point. But it does feel like a fitter unit. But it also feels like a smaller unit. It feels more compact. It's almost as if it's kind of like crunched in between your knees, sort of thing, in between your feet. So it is a smaller thing.
Do you think some of that's to do with the gearbox position? Because that's now
Yep.
under and sort of behind, is that right?
Yeah, the gearbox, the change to the transmission is very significant, more significant, I think, than BMW kind of made it sound. There is a dimensional sort of benefit to it in terms of the shape of the engine and the compactness of the unit, but there's also a benefit in terms of the way it feels. It feels much slicker. It's you can click up and down through the quick shifter much more. For me, it's much more like a conventional, almost sportier gearbox feeling. I know you don't like it quite as much.
Look, it's the 1300 is better than the 1250. It is faster.
Yeah.
There's just that sort of double clickness, and I know that it's not supposed to be a sports bike or a sports tourer necessarily, although it probably is actually a sports tourer. But I think
Yeah,
by
it
the
is.
time
We'll get to that.
yeah, there you are. That's
Yeah.
plot spoiler. But it's definitely the 1300 is a better quick shift function than the 1250.
Yeah.
I just think the selector doesn't tend to select as quickly as I want it to.
Yeah.
That said, and going back to your point about the engine spinning up quicker, revving faster, there were several occasions, and Simon and I were joined. We were commed up, weren't we? So I could hear what you were saying, and you up to about 69 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But there were several occasions where we were both on that, opening the throttle, going, "What?"
Yeah, there was a fair bit of that going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so un-GS like, really.
I mean,
it's not short of power, of course, the 1250 and its predecessors, but that thing's...
No, but it does feel like a significantly different motorbike, and it begins with that engine. It feels like a significantly fitter, tauter, more responsive motor. But it's got a few other things that are quite interesting too. We found with the transmission, like I said, the sort of the third benefit of this new transmission is the power loss. It's only losing 6.6% power figure against sort of its claimed, which, you know, normally BMW are pretty good with their figures. They claim them from the crank, and they're normally pretty accurate. And if you take those figures as accurate from the crank, 6.6% difference with the new bike, and it's 11.6% difference with the old 1250, which is what you'd think the shaft drive normally saps. You know, traditionally over the years when we've measured shaft drive engines, that's what it takes out of the transmission, out of the engine. Yeah, 6.6, that's kind of like chain drive territory. So it's a significantly less impact on the performance of the engine, which is, I think that's a major issue. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So engine is sort of fitter all round. And it's more efficient as well.
Oh yes, MPG stats.
Is much more efficient, yeah.
Despite having a marginally smaller tank. Well, again, the claim is 19 litres versus 20 litres.
Yeah.
But in reality, we found a little bit different, didn't we?
We
found
did.
that to be
and again,
undermeasured.
This is slightly contra to BMW because they claim that this engine is slightly less efficient. If you look at their figures compared to the 1250, it is slightly less fuel efficient. But that's not what we found. We found it was more fuel efficient, both on the dash and what we measured putting into the tank. So again, although this bike has, as it turns out, almost 2 litres more tank capacity, they kind of run out at about
Than the 1300.
Than the 1300. They kind of run out at about the same time.
Yeah, it's about 5 miles.
Yeah, 5 miles, 204 miles, 209 miles.
Yeah, 5 miles. Which is remarkable. So it's a thick end of 45. What was your stats? 40.
We had 40. So it's 47.8 miles per gallon and 44 miles per gallon. So 47.8 and 44 were the claimed, what the bike claimed it was doing, which was kind of about right. It's pretty much close to what we measured.
And the dash read an average speed of 46 miles per hour. Of course, we were in tandem, so it was
about
the same for both bikes.
Yeah, and we did swap around a little bit during the day as well to try and even out the figures, but we were both riding pretty much the same style in the same speed over the same road. So so that's an interesting little thing. So again, the new engine. Traditionally, you would expect a new engine to be more efficient than the previous generation. And I was a little bit surprised, even though it was a bigger motor, when BMW said actually it's a little bit less fuel efficient. But again, it turns out, well, the way we measure it, they're wrong. Yeah. So that was the fueling.
So over 200 miles to the tank is essentially the bottom line.
But you're going to be running out at 200 miles, so...
Yeah, well, in fact, it went down to 0, and then having... the big flashy warning thing comes up with about 25, 26, 27, whatever it was, miles to go.
Yeah.
And you get down to 0, and we still carry on for about, 12 miles.
Another
I think
12
it was after 0.
Yeah.
But,
So you've got a little bit extra to play with if you do hit 0.
200 miles if you really push it.
I know this is getting a bit tedious, but we haven't finished talking about gearing yet, because there is one more impact, which is in terms of the actual differences in gearing between the two, because they are completely different transmissions. It turns out they've geared the 1300s with shorter gearing for first and second gear for better acceleration, which is reflected in the standing quarter times, because this thing, the 13, is quicker over the standing quarter. It's slightly slower 0 to 60, but we're talking tenths of a second.
If that, yeah.
And 0 to 60s on motorbikes is all about the launch. And that is easily within the bounds of variability. With ace performance tester Bruce Dunn, even he can't be that consistent. That's within the bounds of variability. So 0 to 60s, you can almost disregard them on a bike, really. Standing quarters are where it matters. And,
not a massively poignant figure to worry about on a
not
GS
a
anyway, is it?
No.
0 to 60 time.
And then I think third and fourth gear are pretty much equivalent ratios on the two bikes. But then in top gear, that's got the 1300's got slightly longer gearing, which gives you a slightly more relaxed cruising pace. And I've always had this little feeling that when you first jump on a GS, on a flat twin, and you hit sort of 70, 80 miles an hour, it does feel like it's kind of revving quite hard. It feels like it's working a bit. And it quickly disappears, that feeling, but it's certainly noticeable that the 1250 at cruising speed, for me, feels like it's revving a bit harder, working a bit harder, and it is revving harder than the 1300 with its slightly longer gearing.
So if you're sitting on the motorway, if you're riding up to Scotland from Peterborough, and you're in 6th gear cruising at 70, it's a bit more than So it's just that feeling, isn't it? You feel like a bit more, and I'm not energised in a bad way.
Which is really nice to have spotted that, because it actually is backed up by the roll-on times that we measured. So we did a 40 to 70 mile an hour roll-on in 4th gear, and then we did it again in top gear. In 4th gear, I think they're pretty equivalent, but in top gear, the 1250 is slightly more energetic and quicker than the 1300.
Because the revs are closer to peak performance, aren't they? Peak torque.
Exactly, yeah. In distance terms, it's 6.7 metres quicker. So if you open the throttle to overtake on both bikes in top gear, you'll be 6.7 metres ahead by the time you hit 70 if you're on the 1250. So that kind of puts it in a little bit of context, I think, in terms of, because in time it's like fractions of a second.
Yeah.
But
so that's again, it's roll on in 6th
Yep.
from 50? Did you say?
40.
40.
40. So you pull out behind a car at 40 miles an hour, accelerate up to 70, you'll be 7 metres effectively ahead of the 1300 on the 1250.
Yeah, but you drop that into third, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, you drop it down again. Of course you would. Yeah, and then clear off. So there we go. So that's quite interesting. The other speed testing stuff, the top speeds were different by substantially. That was quite a lot quicker, about 10 miles an hour quicker, I think.
Tell me what they are. So 147 miles per hour
Yep.
on the 1300, 139 here.
Yeah. Which, you can put down to peak power, you can put down to maybe the gearing, you can put down to aerodynamics perhaps,
Yes.
and maybe some engine management going on there. Maybe BMW are happy for this thing to go a bit faster, so they let it. Everything's managed these days.
You're right, and we learned that on the dyno. We were speaking to Andy at BSD, weren't we, about the way and things, the way bikes in general are geared.
Yeah.
And manufacturers don't want you to go 186 miles an hour on a GS, but it can. I'm sure it can go a lot faster than BMW want you to go.
Yeah, probably could. So
That's a different rabbit hole, or
Yeah.
a different path. We won't worry about that for now.
So engine-wise, I mean, they do feel very different, but yeah, the new bike is fitter. It's got more performance. I struggle really. It's more efficient, I think. I struggle to see why you'd prefer the 1250 engine over the 1300. Apart from that particular bike, which because of its exhaust sounds really fruity.
Yes,
that
it's got
1250 is very loud.
It's got the extra Akrapovic.
It is
hasn't
very good, yeah.
Which is an optional extra. The silence on this looks really puny, doesn't it?
Tiny,
it's very
isn't
small.
it?
We've spoken a lot over the last few years, possibly even a decade, about big cans, haven't we, so to speak?
Yeah.
GSXR 1000 as an example.
It's a massive
It's
can.
like a dustbin. And then this is teeny tiny, but you can get that extra Akrapovic for your £950. I think it is extra. It's like a split twin over and under thing.
It certainly wins the prize of smallest end can on the market, I think. I can't think of anyone who's got smaller. But yeah, the 1250 is louder. But anyway, I can't think of a reason why you'd prefer the 1250 motor over the 1300.
It's sprightly. It's really interesting, isn't it? It almost doesn't behave like a flat twin.
It doesn't. It doesn't behave like a flat twin adventure bike, that's for sure. It feels much more energetic. But that's not necessarily something we can say about the bike as a whole. But again, we'll sort of come on to that after we've talked about. What do you want to talk about? The handling, the chassis, the way that it steers, the way that it turns, the way they feel?
Yes. I can't say no, can I?
No.
I don't want to
I mean,
talk about that.
we've got a whole lot of stuff to get through. So for me, again, I know it sounds like we're banging the same drum, but this feels so much more flickable, agile, lighter. It feels like substantially lighter than the actual weight figures. I back-checked that we measured the 1250 in 2019 when it first came out, and it's the same weight. We measured it at 258 kilos, fully fueled. And this is 260 with the engine bars. Is that all right, 260? Yeah, I've got this at 260 and that's 250. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
so that's a difference of 10 kilos, and the claimed weight difference is 12.
Yes.
237 against 249.
Yeah. So this is, some 10 kilos lighter.
Yeah, and feels it, definitely feels
It
it.
feels more than that
Yeah,
lighter.
yeah.
It is really agile.
It's very dynamic. It's a real pleasure to I know some of those roads we were riding earlier on.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't guess they had the same suspension travel, because they have. I would say that that's a lot shorter suspension, because the ride quality feels better. It feels like it's a better application of whatever algorithms they've got in the semi-active suspension. So it soaks up the bumps better, it holds its line better through corners.
Because the suspension has had an overhaul, hasn't it, on
Yeah.
the 13? In fact, everything has pretty much.
Yeah, it doesn't feel particularly stiffer to me. I mean, some people have commented, I think, that it feels a bit too stiff or feels a bit too sporty. It doesn't feel like that. It certainly doesn't feel harsh. We've ridden it on some pretty bumpy roads.
Very much so, yeah. I was going to say, just on that point, as there's so many permutations, so many variables with the suspension settings that one can dial in and
Yeah,
dial out. So
yeah.
it sort of it depends on your weight as a rider. It depends on how you're riding. There's so many different things we can talk about. But ultimately, overall, the way we found it, it soaks up. There's no better bike, is there? Certainly for those bumpy roads that we've been on today. When you're up on the pegs a little bit, you're just taking the weight off the seat and you're riding it like what do you say, like a jockey.
Yeah, you sort of ride it jockey style.
There's no better bike.
And its road holding is phenomenal too. The way it just sticks into the tarmac. I mean, again, the 1250 has had it has had it for, the GS has had it for years. This thing has got it even more so. The way it just hoovers itself into the tarmac, it really does feel like you can't imagine how badly you'd have to be riding to properly unstick it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's possible.
This
but
has long been a bike that defies its appearance in terms of its road
Yes.
handling.
Yeah.
And then the 1300 kind of takes that one step further, doesn't it? Or
yeah.
probably even two steps, because
Yeah.
you can just throw it in and it sticks there nicely. They're both on identical tyres. Is a point I want to make sure that you get as well. They're Michelin Anarchies, aren't they?
Yeah, that was an important step.
Yeah.
And in terms of the ergonomics, the bare stats are not really that interesting. We kind of measured the same. I think we measured slight differences to BMW's claimed figures in terms of seat heights and that kind of thing. But the differences between them were what BMW claimed. There's a couple of interesting little things, like the BMW's, I can't remember what official name they give it, but the lowering
adaptive
device.
ride height.
That's the one, adaptive ride height. Front and rear drops as you come into a halt.
Yeah.
It's a proper advantage, even for 6-footers.
Yeah.
You go, this is so easy to get your feet on the ground, and you don't notice it doing it.
It's a bit of a stretch. When we've been riding with tank bags on the back on the pillion seats, haven't we? And when you're hopping onto this one, it takes a bit more of a.
You've got to swing your leg, you put your hip out, getting your leg over, as it were.
Yeah, you've got to have a bit of a workout before you do it.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant, and it means that the 1300 is so much more accessible for riders of all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
I think it opens up the GS as a whole to more riders, not necessarily shorter ones, but it means that the BMW have attracted a wider audience into this.
Certainly made it more acceptable for more people. But it's interesting that, as you spotted, that when you turn the ignition off, it goes even lower than it does on its low setting. So it goes down to 820mm when the...
no, it's when you turn the bike off.
Sorry, when the bike is
the
off.
ignition off, it goes down to whatever it is,
it
830.
sort of sets, clicks.
And then you turn the bike off completely, and it goes down 10 mil more.
Yeah, that is cool. So it's 845mm high when you're on its sort of normal riding, at its high mode. The 1250 has got a two-position seat, which is very classic. Goes from 850 to 870mm, so you can have it quite a bit higher. And ergonomically, that does make a slight difference, because if you have it on the high setting, it does change your relationship to the bars and to the pegs. It gives you a tiny bit more leg room.
Yeah.
And the other thing we noticed was that in terms of the compactness, the handlebars and the dash are much closer to you on the 1300, which again, for an age thing, it means the screen is closer to your face so you can see it. But you do feel more, the bars are the same width, so it's a little bit more splayed out because it is a little bit closer. It does tend to sort of
Move your arms
spread
out.
your arms apart a little bit. So it does feel like a wider riding position, but more compact at the same time, closer together. It is different.
What I found was, again, just to reiterate, we're 6 foot tall, both of us, I felt as though the peg to seat height was not cramped, but it felt short, it felt tighter. Not necessarily a bad thing. I didn't feel uncomfortable for all the miles that we did ride it. I felt like my knees were a little bit closer in together, so I felt a little bit more in the bike, which was a nice thing.
Yeah.
But I felt a sort of a strain across the back of my shoulders, and I think that's because, almost like you were saying about that riding position, is slightly.
The bars are
slightly
as
out.
wide, but they're a bit closer to you. So it kind of does.
It kind of accentuates its sportiness, because it almost wants you to get a bit more tucked in.
It does, it does. It's pulling you closer into the front of the bike.
Yeah. But the wind protection on that thing, on the 1300, is unbelievably
Again,
good.
it's amazing. It's like, you look at it, and for the frontal area, it's not as imposing as the 1250, which you could, in some sort of psychological sense, say that counts against the 1300, because I'm spending 25 grand on a bike. I want it to look like a big thing. This looks a lot smaller, but this wind management is way better than the 1250. The electric screen goes more higher. Yeah. It's a higher screen. It's more vertical.
It's nice that it's electric.
Yes, it's nice. It's electric, even though you do have to have a couple of button pushes, perhaps, to get to it. If you just had your heated grips on your favourites button, then you have to reset it to have the screen, which is a bit of a nuisance.
I think once you get used to it, it's less of a faff. But initially, once you've been used to riding this, there's obviously more buttons on this as well, so it makes it easier. But
well, don't forget, we did have a race to adjust the screens, and the manual wins
even
every
left-handed.
time. Yeah.
But brilliant. We made the comment, I think, off camera earlier on about those two sort of plastic transparent wings that it's
wind
it's
deflectors.
shoulders. Yeah, the wind
Yeah,
deflectors
yeah.
on the side there. They look a bit like I made them in my DT class at school and then riveted them on. But boy, oh boy, are they efficient. And you ride along at 60, 70 miles an hour and there's barely a breeze on your head, on your on shoulders or
very
your
good.
chest. You can just about feel it on the top of your forearms, but it's nothing. I mean, in a way, it makes you understand that you are outside still and you are riding.
Yeah.
Mega. And of course, you can then jump on the 1250. You go,
Yeah, you're back to that kind of adventure bike noise again. Yeah, again, it doesn't feel like an adventure bike.
but yeah, definitely the ergos are different. And I think I'd want that bars just a little bit further back to if I was going to use it as a touring bike, I'd want the bars. I think they are adjustable, aren't they? So whether just rolling them a little bit would make that difference to my shoulders.
I'd like the bars a bit narrower.
Yeah,
I've always
maybe
thought
that would
GS, the
cause
bars
it.
are quite a long way apart, and it always feels, I've said this before, it feels like paddling a canoe. You're kind of doing this a bit, and it's like, I just want them to be a little bit tighter in. But, I mean, in terms of general comfort, did you have any discomfort? I mean, apart from the shoulders thing, did you have any other discomfort?
No.
Did you bum ache or anything?
Nothing at all. I think had we sat there and done 200 miles in one sitting, it might have been different. But no, I was absolutely fine. How about you?
No, I was happy as Larry. They were both exceptionally comfortable. Wind protection, like I say, better on that, but seat-wise, no, spot on.
Yeah.
No, very good.
Should we talk about the elephant in the room that is the
What's that?
headlights?
Oh, the headlight.
We put that
the
thing
styling.
on. Yeah, so we put
Okay.
a thing on social media. I just took a front shot, side by side, and I said, which is your favourite? And there were lots of different opinions, many of which were wrong. No. But the vast majority preferred the wonky look of the 1250 than the new X on the 1300. Which
I don't want to get hung up on headlights and looks. It's difficult because out of all the things that we talk about in terms of opinion and being subjective, that's the most divisive. It's the most specific to individuals. They kind of have their own take on what things look like, and we can argue about, I don't know, taste in music or whatever you want, but it's as relevant as arguing about the look of these two. But there are some sort of, the GS has always had a slightly disjointed, wonky, left field, unbalanced, asymmetrical appeal. The headlights were always asymmetric. The bike used to rock from side to side. There was an asymmetry about the shaft drive. There was something that was always a bit left field and oddball. And you look at it now and it does look like an agglomeration of components that have sort of been adapted and bolted together over the years that don't quite work together as a whole. And it gives the bike a quirkiness and an eccentricity that I think a lot of owners, not all owners, but I think a lot of owners kind of subliminally identify with that. There's a point of difference. It's something a bit different about the bike.
part of the attraction
Part
of
of
the
the
GS,
attraction
right?
of the GS for a lot of people. This hasn't got that. This is beautifully designed. Every part is seamlessly integrated into another part. There's a few bits of finish. You can see a few bits of wires here and there which aren't so clever. But as a design piece, it's exceptional. From the shape of the end, from the shape of the heads, from the finish on the heads, right the way through to, I don't know, well, this one's done in these sort of fancy green colours, whatever it's called, Tramontana or something.
Hannah Montana.
Travis Pastrana colours,
Oh,
I don't know. But there is something
well,
slightly generic about it.
Of course, one of the big differences is trellis frame versus pressed steel frame.
Yeah,
You went up to it, didn't you, on the first day?
Yeah.
And went, oh, what's this?
Yeah, it's got a lot of plastic on it. Tap, tap. Oh, hang on, that's the frame. Yeah. But it is slightly more generic. It's a bit more homogeneous. It's a bit more like anybody could have designed it.
Symmetrical. Yeah.
It's a bit more symmetrical.
And I like it for that.
Which is,
That's my
again,
opinion, isn't it?
it's kind of broadening its appeal because more people, I suspect, will. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see the sales figures. How up and down are they? Where do they go relative to the 1250? I'd love to know what that sold in its first year in 2019.
It was.
Against what this sells. But anyway,
Do you think people are looking out for bargains on this because that's out now? Do you think they assume that the dealers will want to get rid of stock? Or
do you know? I don't think so because they are so. For a start, they don't have to. I think they can. This isn't actually technically listed on BMW's website anymore, so you can't actually buy it according to BMW. I'm sure there'll be examples still out there and about. BMW values don't really get affected by the new model turnover. They don't happen that often. And they're so confused with all the accessories that you bolt on, you can never tell what you're buying anyway.
That's true. There are so many, aren't they?
So no, I don't think it's going to affect the used prices of these at all. And the other reason is that they're so different. They are completely different bikes. And this will probably get to this point, but if you're buying the GS, if you're buying the 1250, you could say it's almost a different machine. You could make a case for preferring it. I wouldn't argue with you. You said, no, I'm a 1250 man, and the reason is not because it's some sort of subliminal opinion, but there are factually some things that I prefer about this bike. We've said the engines. I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want the 1300. As a package, I can think of a few reasons why you would want the 1250. Because it is a bigger, more imposing machine. Look what I am owning. Look what I'm riding. It's massive. It's bigger than your bike. Whereas that is a bit kind of like, well, you know, it's a bit more the size of a. It's smaller than a cross tourer. It's tiny. You know.
There's been no official word from BMW just yet about a GSA 1300.
Wow.
But it's obvious that it's coming.
Obvious that
right?
it's coming.
Do you think people are waiting for that?
I think
Because
people.
the GSA sales on
Yeah,
on the
I think people
1250
will be
were-
well advised to if you think that.
If that's what you want, if you
Yeah.
want that.
Well, let's talk about the sportiness of this thing. This is it's an adventure bike for sports bikes riders.
Well, yeah.
It's for the sportier adventure rider. It doesn't even feel like an adventure bike. It feels like a sports tourer. You know?
I get that, definitely. That's a really good point.
And again, that is one of those reasons why you might prefer the 1250 because it still has that adventure bike appeal. This thing is it's almost like moving itself into a different category almost.
It's not like the 1300 has replaced the 1250, is it? That's where we're getting
No.
to with this kind of conclusion.
No.
They're
You
almost.
you could quite happily sell them alongside. Well, they are because you can buy the
Different
1250 GSA still.
Yeah.
So you could still buy your 1250. It was an interesting thing. It was an observation that someone made the other day when we were talking about how about a year ago I rode the Multistrada's V4 Rally against the 1250 GSA, and it made the GSA feel fairly lethargic, fairly languid, and that's quite an energetic engine, when you thrash it a bit. But the V4 was so light and so powerful and so integrated.
They claim 170 brake. don't
Yeah,
they,
it's
on
a
that?
lot. But when I first jumped on the 1300, I immediately thought, hello, someone at BMW has ridden the Multistrada and said, let's make it more like that, because that's how it feels. Which is a positive thing in almost every way, other than it feels less like that now.
Yeah.
Not more like a Ducati than, but it feels less like a 1250 GS, which is, it could go either way. But and in terms of value, as we looked at the price of that in July, that cost about £23,000
Yeah.
in that
As it
exclusive
stands.
TE spec with lots of option 719 bling on it all over the place, the mirrors and
Yeah.
the engine
The
cases.
triple
and-
black version as well.
Triple
isn't it?
black, yeah. I think it was an exclusive. I think it was a limited run. They made like 200 of them or something. And in this trim, this is the same price.
So that's a TE as well, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's got option 719. It's got dynamic pack, and it's got.
Yeah.
Wait, I've got the list here.
It's got the lot. Like I say, I don't think anybody buys a standard BMW. Nobody
No.
buys a standard GS.
Well, what do they? They are as standard. They come in about 15 and a bit, don't they? And then
Yeah.
once you've added the things that
Once
really
you put
ought
wheels
to
on
have. Dynamic pack, touring pack, the Tramontana adaptive vehicle height control, blah 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 blah. Well, the list.
Goes
The list
on.
that BMW sent reckon this has got the double silencer, which it hasn't. So actually,
Okay.
as it stands, that's about £1,000 cheaper than that.
That's actually cheaper.
Yeah?
Yeah.
As it stands.
So I suppose after all those numbers and all the opinion, the most important thing is which one do you prefer?
That's an easy answer. The 1300.
In any scenario?
In all scenarios, mainly because I like the sportiness of it. I like the road handling. I felt more confident on it. I think a lot of that has to come down to its weight saving.
Yeah.
The power, the extra power, which I love. I think that having the advanced electronics, the new sort of newfangled electronics, I like that adaptive ride height thing. That's really cool. Heated seats, heated grips, adaptive cruise control. We've not mentioned that.
Oh, yeah, of
I
course,
like that
yeah.
system. I have it in my car. I've had it on bikes before. I like the way it takes that fatigue out of long distance riding,
Yeah.
and it works a treat as well.
Yeah, it's good.
I like the whole package. probably wouldn't have it in that green colour, but yeah. How about you? Come on, money where your mouth is.
Yeah, I'm same as you, maybe with a couple of exceptions. I think for general riding, for anything vaguely energetic or sporty, I'd take the 1300 every single time. The only sort of scenario in which I'd possibly go for the 1250 would be walking down and looking at the bike in your garage, especially when you start to bling it up a bit with your custom things that you fit because you like them, like you've got your own sat-nav instead of theirs, or you've got your own panniers and you do your own thing and you cover it in stickers. And it kind of got a bit more of that round-the-world vibe still.
I'm an adventurer.
It kind of has, and I kind of like its ugliness. You know, and people say, "Oh, the new one's ugly," and it's like, well, when has a GS ever not been ugly?
True.
You know, they're all a bit ugly. That's why we love them, isn't it? Is it less ugly? Do we love them a bit less because of that, perhaps? You know, it's weird, isn't it? How you kind of like going for the underdog. It's not really the underdog, is it? Because it's the best-selling bike of the last 20 years. But you know what I mean. So I don't know. There is an element of coming down and seeing my GS all bedecked in stickers and looking like it could go around the world. So there's a bit of that. And then in terms of like a long distance, if I was going to do a really big journey, I know that the 13's got better aerodynamics, but they're not exactly bad. And it has a sense of mass that might just be me, but when I'm a long way from home and I'm on my own and I have to ride 1,000 miles and the magnets are on to get back, I quite like big bikes. I like the sense of security of mass, feeling like it's your home on wheels. And I get that with that, and I might not get it so much with that. Maybe when it's covered in panniers, or if they bring out the GSA version with its bigger tank and all the rest of it, I feel completely different. I probably would, actually.
I get it.
But
I understand that.
you know, I'm not saying that I definitely prefer the 1250. I'm just saying I can see a reason why you'd kind of be like, oh, they've spoiled it a bit. I can understand that. I don't necessarily agree with it.
How about this then? This is a bit of a, not a curveball, but for 23 and a bit thousand pounds,
Yeah.
let's take into consideration the Triumphs, the KTMs, the Ducatis
Oh.
of this world, or others.
It's rivals.
What do you fancy? Would you?
I can't get past the V4 Multistrada. I mean, man, that thing is unbelievable. For the way I ride, the fact that it's got a massive tank, all right, it really does drink like a fish, but it's got a huge tank, so I can still do 200 plus miles on it, which is enough.
That's the rally version, isn't it?
Yeah, the rally version. And the pace it goes about its business, and that engine is intoxicating. This is a great engine. It's lovely to use, but it doesn't make me giddy. The V4 makes me absolutely giddy. So yeah, that sort of takes the honours for me. What about for you?
Absolutely the same.
Yeah, I know,
I
it's
love that
crazy,
volume.
isn't I mean, this is not regarding running costs or any
No,
other business. This
no,
is just to
just
ride.
as a piece of equipment to ride to get from A to B with a big smile on your face. That Multistrada V4S. I had it as a long termer for a year when
Yeah.
it first came out, and I've ridden the rally and
It sort of warps time and space. It
as
makes
the
you.
Italians do.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
bonkers. But we're not. This isn't a Ducati test, is it? This is BMW. So you know, I mean, it's an amazing job they've done.
Yeah.
It is, you know, like at the beginning we said. I think you know this is the most evolved flat twin. You know, it's taken them 100 years to get to this place where this bike is just so refined and so good. How could they possibly make this any better? And then they built this thing, and you go, well, empirically, in every respect, it is. It is extraordinary, and it is so integrated. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful piece of engineering, a lovely piece of design. If you're into that kind of side of motorcycling, yeah, you just stare at it in bewilderment. It's a fantastic job.
Two
But-
quite different bikes then.
Two different bikes. Fantastic job isn't always enough sometimes.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right.
Excellent.
Let's
We've
leave
talked
it
enough.
there. We've got lots of data. There'll be some more information on the website. That's Bike Social. Let me write that down there. Bikesocial.co.uk for all the information and data as well. Thank you, Mr. Hargreaves.
No,
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. This has been a fun few days, hasn't it?
Good. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Here comes some corporate messaging your way. If you haven't got your bike insurance with Bennett's, please do so. It's rather mega. You also get free Bike Social membership as well. But if you don't insure your bike with Bennett's, you can still become a Bike Social member at £6 a month or £60 a year. And there are currently about 149 different competitions and exclusive things and discounts and all sorts of wonderful things to enhance your motorcycling. If you're not yet a member of our Facebook group, come and be a member, and it's quite chatty. We're about 5,000 members at the moment. It's called Bennett's Bike Social. And what else have I got to say? Anything else?
Get your podcasts from Front End Chatter.
Front End Chatter.
Do that.
Yeah. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as all
yeah, and that.
YouTubers have to say. And thank you once again. Oh, any comments?
Comments.
Let us know your thoughts and opinions. Not about the headlights, but some proper opinions about more important things. See you next time.
Because I can't see anything close up because my close-up vision's gone. So this is correcting my vision for long distance. If I take my contact lenses out, then my short vision is fine. I can see this. I know.
Are you rolling, Jay?
Double skin.
This is old person's chat with Simon and Michael.
It's like the outro. No. Okay.
Nothing to see here. Although I do like a man in leathers to make my teeth.
It's good, isn't it?
You get the colour right with the tea bag, and then you just put the milk in to achieve the right consistency. You don't.
This is the second episode of Old Man Chat with Simon and Michael. Or in our final
It'll be
talk.
in the final bit,
So the headlines are...
I think.
Because the...
Just over 200 miles.
Is that what you reckon?
And that's my estimation.
Do you think because the 1300 is 1 litre less, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But it's fancier and newer and
Yeah.
spunkier.
Okay.
You reckon about the same?
About the same, yeah.
What happens if we did? That'd be interesting.
Let's do this again.
Come on then.
Right, roll.
Okay, have a quick look behind, make sure no one else is going to walk out.
Yeah.